Hey listeners, this is Ken Kell. When I'm not calling the action on the ice for the Red Wings, I'm listening to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
All right, Doc here for the Detroit Beard Collective. Are you rocking a beard this spring, cuz? Is your beard feeling dry, scaly? Could the flyaway hairs use some taming? Does your beard have leftover food in it? You can't be rocking a beard like that these days. There's companies out there that help you groom your beard in a nice, tight way. Go to DetroitBeardCollective.com, a Detroit company that provides quality beard care products. Go to their website, DetroitBeardCollective.com, and check out the many items that they sell. Beard care sets, combs, Detroit Beard Collective t-shirts, or the very popular Beard Crate, which is a comprehensive beard care set which allows you to choose your favorite Detroit Beard Collective product, all for one great price. DetroitBeardCollective.com.
Hey everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listening to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
All I want to know is you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready?
5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes!
I said, are you strong? They said, I'm strong if you strong. And I said, we strong then.
I'm a man. I'm 40.
Darren McCarty gets his shots in at Claude Lemieux. And look who came all the way out to try to help. Patrick Waugh. Oh, my goodness.
You are listening to the Doc and Jock Show on the Detroit Sports Podcast.
Often imitated, never duplicated. Welcome and thank you for downloading another episode of the Detroit Sports Podcast. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me for week number 2, Kenny, the Rock Franzel. What's up, Kenny? What's going on?
It's a streak.
I got something special.
2 in a row. Yeah.
I got something special just for you because I know that you said I need to have a nickname on this podcast. So I know this will probably bring a smile to your face.
Jabroni.
Yeah, see, I know you're ready to bring the noise. You're ready to talk about the happenings.
Crazy week of sports.
Yeah, but before we get into all that, I was just we were just chatting a little bit before we started, and we kind of were just talking about you were listening to Valenti and Foster on the way over. So I was just fascinated because I know a lot of people who listen to this podcast also listen to sports radio, and 97.1 The Ticket, the #1 radio station around town. It's good stuff, and I was just curious, what are your listening habits around town?
Yeah, I like I kind of go back and forth. I really like Armani and Rico. That's probably my favorite of the local shows, but I bounce back and forth. I don't really have an affinity towards one or the other. I gravitate more towards the 105.1.
Why is that?
Some of the voices I think on the Ticket are a little bit stale, a little bit Valenti doesn't like that. Yay. Okay. Let's move on. All right, we already know their opinions, whereas I think Rico and Ryan are a little bit of a fresher voice. We haven't heard them that much. So, they're a little bit of a newer voice to the Detroit radio. I don't know. I just tend to gravitate more towards them. I don't care for a lot of the matchups that they have on, the Ticket. I think they've got some people poorly paired up. I think Woj would do better in certain areas, but also Woj creates his own schedule. So that's, he's going to go where he wants to go, and then they're just going to put the guy with him that they can work the best. But I don't particularly affiliate with one of them or the other. I think sometimes they both talk a lot about stuff that doesn't matter. There's a particular show on a particular station that tends to talk a lot about stuff that is. Sometimes I wonder what they're talking. Yesterday they were talking about a guy who wrote a book about a guy who was on a TV show 30 years ago.
And so that did catch your attention.
Fascinating radio. Fascinating sports radio. At some point, you're going to talk about sports on your sports station.
That's what you were thinking?
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, I switched over to oldies. because at least I could be entertained. So
now, and for those of you listening, wondering, okay, Kenny's giving his opinions on radio. He did participate in. He went to school at Specs Howard. Mm-hmm. You did do an internship at Q95.5 back in the day, and just talk a little about that. You definitely were behind the scenes working with some big name personalities.
Yeah, it's a great business. It's a fun business. I miss it, but back then I just wasn't ready for it. It's a very volatile business. So
what'd you do over there at Q95.5? What'd they have you do?
I was the lead intern for the morning show, and I kind of just did a lot of little stuff here and there. I did some promotions for them. I helped out in sales. I kind of worked behind the scenes here and there wherever I could. But my primary job was I was the lead intern and a producer for the one of the morning shows there during its time.
Okay, well, who were the hosts? Who was hosting the show?
I interned for. I started with Danny Badaducci, the eternal Danny Badaducci, but then I actually started with Kevin O'Neill and the Q Crew, and then was there with Steve Cochran and Steve Grunwald. Then they fired me the day before my birthday. So,
how's that go down? They call you in, it's like, listen, we're going to go in a different direction.
I was fired because, and I quote, "I do too much, and it's getting in the way of the people who I pay to do their jobs doing their jobs."
Oh, so they basically told you were just a super intern, and they said, we can't have you be this anymore.
Basically, yes. That was the craziest, most political thing that's ever been said to me. You're fired for doing too much and taking away from the people that I pay to do those jobs.
Gotcha. So you had an internship, and then they said, well, we're not going to have you complete it because you're just doing such a good job.
My internship had ended.
Okay.
And
so you got a job.
I was done, and I wasn't officially hired, and I was still technically an intern.
Okay.
But they wanted to keep me aboard because they were using me on air, and I was doing a lot of stuff. And at that point in time, we were also transitioning to the new show, and the new producer, Steve Grunwald, who is an amazing person. Him and I got close when they were doing the transition, and he wanted me to stick around to help them out and get them acclimated, and which I did. And it was a great run. I had an amazing time, and then I was fired for the most BS reason on the planet. So.
And then you're just like, you know what? I got to think about this whole radio thing because it's tough. Everyone that I've talked to about the radio business just says it's just unbelievably challenging. It's a tough thing to do, and you really got to grind, cut your teeth at it and get a lot of experience before you really, really can take off in a radio career for sure.
Yeah, and I've got some friends who I went through Specs Howard with who are still in radio. Renee Vitale here in town, she works on the weekends and stuff with some of the different stations, and my buddy Ben is a big timer up in Port Huron. So. I've worked with people, I went to school with people who are still working in the industry, but it is tough. It's a very difficult, very, very difficult industry.
For those of us who are like trying, I definitely thank you. You took me to the studios, and we got to, it's what?
That's right, we did. Yeah, we got to play around in the studio.
It's beyond the statute of limitation. We went there and pushed all the buttons and seen everything that was going on, and it was a fun time. Once you go see a radio station, it's really fascinating with all the electronics, the mics. It's something that provides you with ambiance, and it's a really nice environment. And I really liked it. I gravitated toward it, and so I built my own little studio here.
And now here we are in the Sports Palace complex of Sterling Heights.
You ready to kick this bad boy off talking about some Tigers?
Let's do it. Let's talk about sports on the Sports Podcast.
You know what? As long as it's entertaining, compelling, as some would say, people will listen to anything, and we're going to try to do that here on the Detroit Sports Podcast. But you were right. I want to give you some credit. Since our last chat, Anibal Sanchez has pitched 2 great games. The Tigers have given him some runs. He has, with a little bit of a lead, with not so much pressure, he has kind of found his stroke, and has his last game, complete game, and he pitched very well. And the Tigers, offense has picked up a little bit.
And it's not that he needs those runs. I mean, he can get it done without the run support, but when you're consistently not getting that support, eventually it wears you down. So, they gave him some pops at the bat, and he was able to do some really good things. He had some very good games, and I think it's sparked this team a little bit. They've played fairly well,
What can you say about Miguel Cabrera? He's just a true leader. After a tough stretch, he's just been on fire. He's dialed in, as most of us would say. And then he, over the weekend, 2 450-foot plus home runs, 2 monster shots. And a lot of people were saying you don't see those kind of massive home runs in the course of a season. We saw 2 in the span of 3 days. It was just amazing what he's doing.
Yeah, he might even make the All-Star game.
Yeah, that's funny. What was your reaction when you saw that, when Kansas City is just dominating the All-Star vote? Really has made a mockery of it.
I'm all for it because I think that the system is flawed. I think a lot of the way baseball does their voting for things like the All-Star game and even the Hall of Fame, I think it's flawed. You know what? The fan base is taking advantage of it, and kudos to them. And, we benefited from a couple years ago when Alex Avila got in over what's his face from New York. That was in part because of a push from Boston to get him in. So, I'm all for it. I don't think it says anything against the guys. We all know who deserves to be there. And Miggy will probably take over that spot. I mean, he deserves to be there, but I don't really care. Honestly, I don't watch the game. And I think it's pointless. I like the festivities. I like the home run challenge. I like stuff like that. But have you watched the All-Star game? Really watched the All-Star game in the last 10 years?
The game that ended up being a tie really hurt the game, really. It sparked this change in making the game important, making it determine home field advantage. I think that's ridiculous. No, I have not watched it.
Yeah.
It is probably the closest All-Star game to the actual game in and of itself.
Yeah.
I mean, the NFL Pro Bowl is a joke. The NBA basketball game now, the scores are approaching 200 to 200. Yeah. They don't play any defense. The NHL, I think, is the worst. They don't check. I think it doesn't represent hockey.
Well, it's an exhibition. I mean, that's all it is. But treat it like an exhibition. I think that's what the NFL's done now. They're like, all right, nobody cares about this, so let's lean into it and just see what we can do. So now they got all-star Hall of Famers picking teams or whatever. It's an exhibition. There's nothing meaningful about it. The problem is that baseball's trying to make it meaningful. It's not really working so much, but at the same time, I don't mind the home field advantage thing. I think it's a better system than potentially what they had before, but at the same time, I don't know. But if you're going to have it mean something, then the players that are playing in that game have to be there for a reason. There has to be a meaningful reason. But then also you look at it, and the Royals are one of the best teams in baseball, so maybe those players do deserve to be there.
Now, if I'm Major League Baseball, I'm looking at this like, whoa, this is kind of an embarrassment. It kind of highlights the flaw in the system, like you talked about. If I'm Major League Baseball, how do you really know how many votes are coming through? So, there's still, when this comes out, there still will be 7 to 10 more days of voting that you can get these players into the game. I would kind of just, tweak the numbers a little bit, maybe have 3 to 4 Royals.
Well,
and then Cabrera, Trout,
Trout's already in. Trout's the only non-Royal that's been leading. They're not all going to play. They're not all going to start. It's a.
So you don't think so? You don't think 8 of the 9 are going to be Royals?
No, I don't think the Royals are going to allow that. I don't think the Royals want that. Do you want all of your guys playing in that game? No, you want them to get some rest. So I don't think a lot of those guys are actually going to wind up playing the game, even though they get voted in. I think that they'll all step aside. I think they're also good dudes, and they realize that maybe I shouldn't be starting. Like Infante is a good dude, and he's probably going to say, you know what, I probably shouldn't start and step aside. But they're not all going to play. There's no way. Major League Baseball has to have somebody represented from every team, right? So there's no way they can do that with that kind of lineup. So it's not going to happen. It's a selfish, it's a shadow kind of thing. It's here's an award. Here you go. You got the most votes for your position. Enjoy your 3 days off.
With the All-Star game, I do agree that you need to kind of tweak it a little bit to make it more entertaining, but maybe you do it in a way that's a little bit more fun. Maybe you make it where the winning team gets a big, huge bonus or a winner-take-all type situation or something to make the game meaningful, but I don't think you should tie the World Series home field advantage to that, to an exhibition game. I just don't like that.
Yeah.
I think I know you want people to watch the game, you want people to tune in, you want it to be representative of the game, but when you have the fans voting in the All-Stars, it makes it, it makes it kind of irky and really kind of something that I'm not in agreement with, and I hope they change it. I hope the new commissioner, Manfred, just decides, hey, listen, change it up. Yeah. Let's not make this game worth more and mean more than it really is.
Well, he's got a lot on his plate right now, so that might not come anytime soon.
Yeah, when the letters FBI and one of your clubs comes about, you have issues.
Is this the most baffling story in sports history? The Cardinals spying on the Astros. Like, you've got the Kings, the top of baseball over the past 10 seasons, spying on arguably one of the worst teams in history of baseball. I don't know all of the details of this story. I don't think we all are going to know much of the details right now, but wow, it's a weird story, man.
When you think about it, at the very top, the upper echelon of sports, I'm not really surprised this is going down. You know, in the past few years, we've had Deflategate, Spygate, cheating scandals, and, you know, you had in Major League Baseball, you had the steroid era. At this point in time, I'm not surprised that a team would do this. No. Because at that very highest level, when you're talking about big money, you're talking about competition, people really do believe, and there's people out there that believe in the philosophy of win at all costs. Yeah. And nowadays with technology, more and more teams are using these sabermetrics. They have these statistical reports. Why not go after them and see what other teams are thinking? And not that listen, I'm not endorsing criminal activity, but I'm not surprised that there's people out there who are, you know, a little bit geeky in the technical department going behind the scenes and trying to sift information. Because listen, on the end, here's what likely happened. He probably got in touch with someone and they said, listen, if you get this information, some dollars are going to come your way. When it comes down to it, you can pay people to do a lot of different things, for sure.
And it gives you the edge. And I mean, you've got major corporations all over the world doing stuff like this, and we're finding out about it on a daily basis. So it was just a matter of time before this came upon, a sporting team here in the U.S. I mean, it happens in sports. I mean, look at all the FIFA stuff that's gone down.
Oh, FIFA.
There was that big rugby scandal a couple years ago, or was it cricket? One of those two. It's a part of the world. There's a lot of people who are very greedy and do bad things in this world. And the more sports expands into the world, the more we're going to see stuff like that. But I think the interesting thing is that how do you punish that? You know, I mean, if it's true, if they were stealing information, if this organization was committing a federal crime in an effort to better themselves, how do you punish that? You can't take away the stats of players. Can you take away the stats of the team without there's a lot of things that are going to have to be figured out once the dust settles on this. And I do not envy the commissioner's position. However, I do think he's probably the only good commissioner in sports right now.
You're a fan of his?
I do. I like him a lot. I think he's very level-headed. I think he deserves the job. And in his short tenure, I think he's the only one of the commissioners that really has earned my respect.
Brad Ausmus disagrees with you right now. He's definitely not a fan of the Major League Baseball or the commissioner's office after the whole replay ordeal versus Cincinnati. Did you see that play?
Yeah, I mean...
he was safe.
Yeah, he was safe.
And what's difficult is, why don't you have HD cameras that can zoom in and take care of this? I mean, it's 2015. I don't believe that call was not overturned because he wasn't safe. It wasn't overturned because it was inconclusive. They could not 100% see if his foot got in there, and that should not be happening in 2015. And Brett Ausmus in the postgame spent a significant amount of time talking about it, and it's true. In 2015, the Major League Baseball replay system was put into place to get the calls right. Yeah. And you're still having issues regarding, the length of time it takes for the managers to get out of the dugout. They're stalling just to double check. And then when you have what all the fans see, what you see at home as being relatively good evidence that the guy's safe, you don't call him safe. It's a bummer. It's
a system that is new, and it's going to take some time. Unfortunately, you're going to get situations like this. But even you look at the NFL, where the NFL's had a replay system in place for several years now, and they've pretty much perfected it, and to the point where they get it right more often than not with those with replays. But they still make mistakes. Things still happen. It's human error. Just because you're seeing it on a screen, everybody sees things a little bit differently. Everybody has an opinion on what they're seeing and how they're seeing it. So you're not really getting rid of human error because you still have somebody watching the screen. I don't like replay in sports. I think we went a long time without it. It's part of the game. You're going to have human error no matter what, because you have humans playing the game and humans judging the game. But, it's part of the game. We're going to get calls that go our way, and then we're going to get some calls like that one that don't go our way. But I think it evens itself out in the course of a season, in the course of, this whole replay thing. We'll get calls that, he should have been out, but it goes our way and he's not, and we get calls the other way. So
what stunk was the fans were into it. They thought, okay, maybe we can get that extra run. And once the replay did not go in our favor, the Tigers were kind of deflated, as everyone in the stadium was, and they only got 2 hits the rest of the game, and then we were treated to Aroldis Chapman coming in and just throwing 100 miles an hour, topping out at 102. We were like, man.
Hey, JD got a hit off him, so that's good, right?
Yeah, but Aroldis Chapman was like, he's fun to watch.
He's a freight train, man. He just comes in. That goes again to my point last week about Ausmus just not being fit to be the manager of the team. If this is getting to you, if that's the reason that you can't get yourselves back into the game, then you don't have any right to win that game to begin with.
So you think Ausmus, in a way, the way he manages in game is not uplifting to this team, even though they've won more games now in the last week.
Do you think if what happened in that game happened 20 years ago with the Dodgers, do you think Tommy Lasorda would have let his team deflate and just give up? No, he'd have been still in their faces. Tommy Lasorda wouldn't have given up on that. You know what I mean? The great managers, they don't give up. They don't let that go. Okay, we didn't get the call. Fuck them. Let's keep going. But Ausmus seemed to just roll over and be like, oh, we didn't get it. Oh, guys, this sucks. We're the worst. You know, he let the team just completely get away from him. And a good manager can't do that. A good manager's got to lead them and say, all right, you know what? This didn't go our way. Who cares? We're still a great team. Let's get this done.
I agree with you. I'm not 100% thrilled with Brad Ausmus's in-game managing style, but I do believe that he has a potential. He's very bright. I do believe that with continued growth, with more experience, I think he's got a chance, because nowadays you want to relate to the players. That's why they went with a younger manager, a guy that can relate to the players, early 40s. He's a guy that's not too far removed from his career, and they saw what happened in St. Louis. They want to emulate that. They want a young guy that can be a player's coach, and I think all the players like him. Is just, the team is slowly taking his personality, and it stinks sometimes because there are some games when they're not scoring runs that 2-3 hits, no passion, and you need more of that. You need more of those leaders maybe developing, because Victor Martinez is gone, Avila is not there. You need some of these guys to step it up. Who's it going to be outside of Miggy?
Well, you know what I've noticed in the past with this series, and then also with the Pittsburgh series, I think Ausmus is just better suited for the National League game. You know, he does a really good job with that small ball, with the swaps and the moving around and stuff like that. I just don't think he's fit for the American League game. So that's, because like I said, I think Ausmus is going to be a good coach. After seeing the Pittsburgh series and how well we did there, and how pretty good we're doing with this Cincinnati series, we might not have won last night, but we dominated them in the first game. So I think that perhaps maybe Ausmus is better suited for a National League game, which could benefit us if we get to a World Series, because you're going to have to play in a National League stadium. So, and
before we end the Tiger talk a little bit, we had a chance to see JV on the mound. Looked okay. I was thinking that the Tigers. I was thinking that JV would, go 6 innings, give up 3 runs, and would get the no decision. He did get the no decision, but that was due to the bullpen, again, displaying some of their weaknesses, and they were not able to win the game. But JV's performance was okay. He did come out after and said, as expected, he was extremely sore. But his second start is going to be fascinating to watch. But I was okay with his first performance.
Yeah, I think he pitched really well. He got, in a little bit of trouble, and I think that they did the right thing. They just pulled him. They didn't let him work himself out of it. Another game or two like that, and then they're just going to let him go. If he gets into a situation like that, they're going to give him the opportunity to work out of it and get himself out of it. It's a shame that they lost that game, because he did a good enough job to get them through 5 innings. I liked what I saw. I was happy with what I saw. So I'm positive. I'm feeling good about JV's return.
And please, Victor Martinez is now making his rehab starts in Toledo. Let's get him back. Let's get Alex Avila back. Let's get Rondon being effective. And this team, hopefully, with the collection of talent as assembled, can be a team that can contend. I really do believe right now the Tigers are kind of winning some, losing some, and there's no real excitement right now.
Right.
But I do believe they have potential to win 10 of 12 games. It's just now seeing it and hopefully, reaching the potential for this team. And we'll have a lot to look at and explore down the line.
For sure.
All right, stay with us. After the break, we're going to peek into some Lions. Some, national outlets are kind of dissing our favorite players. We're going to talk about Michigan State, the happenings there, that Michigan State handling success in a way that makes the Doc very proud. And we'll probably talk about it next. Doc and the Rock, rocking the podcast game here on the Doc and Jock podcast, episode 97, Detroit Sports Podcast.com. Stay with us. All right, cuz, let's check in with one of our favorite sponsors, Sport Displays Jersey Mount. The Sport Displays Jersey Mount are the easiest and most affordable way to proudly show off your favorite jersey, uniform, sweater, t-shirt, or costume. With its unique design, Sport Display Jersey Mounts are the only hangers on the market that can be mounted to any surface. This allows for easy access to your favorite jersey on game day by simply snapping the rod into or out of the holder. You've got yourself an Anthony Mantha jersey, you want to hang it up. If you have a Steve Yzerman jersey, he not only is a great executive, you want to hang up his Detroit Red Wing jersey in your office, simply snap the jersey mount on and off. It's easy to use. The jersey mount really adds to any man cave. Sport Display jersey mounts are affordable, easy to install. They can be mounted anywhere to both wall or ceiling. If you want, go to jerseymount.com/Detroit-sports-podcast and get a jersey mount and get 5% off. Visit jerseymount.com and check out a really great product that really adds to any man cave. jerseymount.com. Get 5% off. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your support. Lots of ways to support us here at the podcast. If you like what you're listening to, if you enjoy the podcast, if you want us to continue to provide great content every Monday and Thursday, if you want us to continue to take phone calls, just go to our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Click through those banner links. Lots of great online deals. I know everybody that's listening likes to save money. DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Click through those banner links, bookmark them, and every time you shop online, nothing extra happens. You get charged no more money. But when you shop online through DetroitSportsPodcast.com, they kick us back a little something, and we can continue to provide great content. DetroitSportsPodcast.com. We greatly appreciate it. Yes, sir. DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Thank you so much for downloading this podcast. Kenny holding his own, bringing strong opinions as usual. Love having him sit in studio. Love having him give his strong opinions. And Mike Tirico, I'll give you some credit. He voiced a similar opinion that you did last night after the NBA Finals. He came on the radio and was like, he would not be surprised if Cleveland decided to let go and part ways with Coach Blatt. And you right away, right after the game, you tweeted out on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. You can follow Kenny and his. You've been tweeting a little bit more, so I know you're getting into the sports opinion game. I like that.
Yeah.
At TV Chips, you've been tweeting us lately. I appreciate that. And you came out right away and were like, David Blatt stunk, and you wouldn't be surprised either if he was fired. And you came. What made you say that? It was really fascinating.
Well, I mean, you look at his. I mean, everybody talked about they were playing with a short bench, but Irving was the only one that was officially injured on that bench. So, you got a guy like Marion who's, a proven defensive leader. Yeah, he's a bit of a liability on the offensive end, but if you've got LeBron dropping 30 to 40 points a week, a game, do you need another guy on offense? All Marion's got to do is run back to the other end of the court, sit in the paint for a little bit, see if the rebound comes, throw it back out to LeBron, and there you go. It doesn't take rocket science to think that that's a good way to do it. They didn't provide Dellavedova with the right amount of help when Curry figured out how to get around him. Yeah, there was guys who played well that you didn't see him again. Mike Miller played 30 minutes one game and then didn't play for the rest of the series. So he didn't manage his bench well. He focused on 3 guys and then that was it. And he let Golden State get around them and beat them. You should not have a player having it as amazing of a series as LeBron did and still lose like that. That's poor management skills right there.
Okay, so you were thinking like, okay, we all had a feeling they were going to lose. It's just the fashion in which they lost after taking a 2-1 series lead really was unimpressive to you. That's a tough job, though. You got to imagine LeBron James's presence is so strong in that organization David Blatt is really going to have to cater to LeBron.
Right.
And is he really able to instill his principles with that team without having to go through LeBron? I mean, it came out today that LeBron's going to have input into the free agents that are going to come in. So, so LeBron has a huge impact on that organization. So David Blatt, all credit to him. He got the team to the finals.
And he did a fairly good job coaching them this season. He got them through some injuries and some issues, and everybody kind of thought that the loss of Love was going to affect them in the playoffs, and it didn't. He knew where to put the right buttons, but when he got to the finals, it's like he just didn't take advantage of it. You can't, like I said, you can't have a guy putting up numbers the way LeBron did. LeBron had a hell of a series, and he had amazing, probably one of the best series in recorded history for one player, and they lost. And that can't be on LeBron as much as it is on the coach, because the coach didn't do what needed. After the third game, or after the fourth game, Dellavedova, whatever, didn't factor into that series. Curry figured him out. He had every move that Dellavedova had to make on him pegged and knew where to go with it next. He faked him out of his ankles and his knees every 35 seconds in those games. So,
and then you superimpose that with Steve Kerr, who's making moves like putting Iguodala in there, and who hadn't started all year, who came off the bench, was an energy guy. He made a simple move because the first 3 games, Golden State didn't look like the team that was the championship team. They were like, their offensive flow was off, and he just mixed it up after game 3, and boom, they took off. They won the series.
And you got a guy who can't hit a free throw to save his life for some reason, who's a fairly decent free throw shooter historically, but he's not hitting free throws, but you're leaving him in there. You're starting him. He played a lot of minutes. He played a significant amount of minutes for a guy who's not a superstar and can't hit free throws like that. So, they played the series well. They played it good. They let LeBron hang out on the perimeter by himself, and when they needed to collapse on him, they did, but they let LeBron beat them because they knew that if they defended the other 4 guys properly, they could still win the series. And here they are, game 6, they won. So
it was an exciting series. It was exciting. I thought it lived up to the hype. I just wish Kyrie did not go down game 1. It could have been a strong 7-game series. I really believe Cleveland would have taken it to a full 7 games with just Kyrie and LeBron. Because you said it yourself, LeBron was outstanding. I'm not as angry as you are, because once Kyrie went down, I really was like, it would take an overwhelming effort to get one more win. And they got it. They got it at home.
Injuries happen. You can't, everybody falls on this injury thing. Injuries happen. It's the name of the game.
But LeBron was kicking it out to an open J.R. Smith. You can't make J.R. Smith make the shots. You can't make Dellavedova be consistent and score 20 a night. I mean, Mazdov had a one great game, and then they didn't go back to him. LeBron can score 40 to 50, but
Mazdov had 2 great games, but unfortunately, the game in between those 2 really good games, he was not played at all.
No, I agree that Cleveland could have played better.
If he has a good game, you put him in the next game, you let him play. He barely played at all the next game. He didn't have a chance to prove that he was having a bad game in that other game. And again, so you need somebody to score. You got Miller. Throw Miller in there. Again, he's a defensive liability, the same way Marion is an offensive liability. But you counteract it. You move around. And Kerr did that. He made the moves. He figured out what needed to be done. He looked at the tape. He had his guys look at the tape. He figured out why Curry was being ineffective, and they made some adjustments. And what happened? Curry became effective, and it made the whole team better. They figured out, hey, if we slip Iguodala in here, we can make some things happen. And they did that. And once they did that, they steamrolled their way into the championship.
And Cleveland could not adjust. But Golden State, great team, start to finish. This 2015 season will go down as really a significant season for them. 67 wins, I believe. Then carrying it over into the playoffs, being down 2-1 versus Memphis, being down 2-1, going on the road in Game 4 versus Cleveland. Unbelievable. They came back, they showed heart, and it was just really a strong collection of talent, coached by Steve Kerr, first-time head coach, but a guy that has 5 rings, has been around the game for so long. Yeah. You knew he was going to have success, and he was a great coach. He lucky for him, he did not choose the Knicks, because he would have no hair left if he decided to go there. He went to Golden State, stayed in his hometown, and look out. That's a young team. Nobody's going to get Draymond Green. They're going to match him.
Yeah.
They're going to stay together for a couple more years. They have a chance to make a run. And besides the Clippers, Oklahoma City, the Spurs, if they retool a little bit, not too many teams that you would not favor Golden State over at this point in time. The Golden State's only going to get better.
Yeah.
So look out, Pistons, and not too much success, I don't believe,
Well, I
for
think
too many other teams.
Looking at that team, did you think that they reminded you a little bit of the Pistons from the 2000s that won, where they had, just kind of a collection of guys who were good but didn't really have it? Curry was a good player, but up until this season, really, he hadn't come into his own too much. And now he's the MVP of the league. He, there was a case to be made for him last night for, MVP of the series. So
and Draymond is the prototypical bad boy. No one gets in the hole, or you get the clothesline down, rough fouls, the swagger. Yeah, they remind me of the Pistons, but with a little bit more offensive talent.
Yeah, they're a little bit
without Klay Thompson dropping bombs. He only had 5 points the clinching game, and he was off the last couple games. So you imagine Curry, Draymond Green with a triple double. It's unheard of.
Yeah.
So that's all kudos to them, man. They played really well. Well, speaking of Draymond Green, Sparty graduate, having some success.
Yep.
Our Spartans, the Spartan football team, has made a little bit of news for maybe not so great reasons. They designed a ring, and on the side of the ring, people are a little bit upset and taken aback when pictures started making their rounds on Twitter that on the Michigan State ring, I believe it's the Cotton Bowl ring, they inscribed the 35-11 Michigan State score. And of course, Michigan fans, once they see that, they're like, oh my gosh, here, look at Sparty, who's only had success for such a short period of time. Look at them trying to brag. And people are like, that's not really humble. That's not really, people are saying, it's not really an accomplishment to trounce Michigan last season when they weren't that good. No. My opinion, I love it. I think you have to continue to find ways to really motivate yourself and really appreciate the hard work. I mean, Michigan State has no problem saying, and I have no problem saying, Michigan down the road in Ann Arbor is the biggest rival. Yeah. That's the team that you pit yourself against. That's the team that you compare yourself against.
Right.
So I have no problem showing off, because also remember, Michigan has thrown some daggers verbally and nationally our way.
Yeah.
The whole little brother comment this year. Before the Spartan game, they took a stake, the Michigan players, and drove it into our field. Why did they do that? That was talked about. So Michigan State is allowed to brag, and it's good. It's good for the rivalry. Sometimes, in competition, it's not fun to just be like, well, yeah, Michigan's our rival. We hope to do our best. No, you got to be like, no, we're going down there to trounce Michigan. We're going down there to dominate them. And I believe that putting the score on the ring is just a great way to really celebrate a great season and a victory over your biggest rival. No problems by me.
Yeah, that's your marquee matchup. I mean, that's the game that you circle in the beginning of the season. You go, here's where we're going to find out what we're made of, because even when Michigan sucks, they're still playing that game hard.
Yeah, and it goes to this point too. A lot of people were up in arms. LeBron James was like, I'm confident because I'm the best basketball player in the world. Now you can poke jokes at that, and I did on Twitter, but I love that. Yeah, LeBron is the best player in the world. You're getting asked by the media, well, how confident are you? He should be up there and be like, listen, you haven't watched my game? My game is tight. And then you have the other side where like Stephen Curry's like, oh, I have the best team, and he's real humble and things like that. I like humbleness in sports a little bit, but sports is about passion. It's about excitement. It's about, it's okay within reason to be a little bit braggadocious. Nothing wrong with that.
Well, I mean, there's
it's not like they, it's not like they put U of M sucks on a ring.
No.
They put a score of a football game.
There's a difference between being, brazen and egotistical and just having some tact about it. Maybe it's not the best idea to put that score on the side of the ring just because it wasn't a premier matchup this season, but over the years it has been their marquee game. And even without Michigan playing well, it's still their marquee game. So, would Michigan, if Michigan had won a championship ring or had won the Cotton Bowl ring, would they put the Ohio State score on it if they had beaten Ohio State? They probably would have, because they consider that their marquee game. So you look at just because Michigan is so blinded by this Ohio State thing that, oh, they're our rival, doesn't negate the Michigan State rivalry. That's an in-state thing. That's going to be big no matter what. Just because you think that if you focus on Ohio State because they're on the national stage, that's going to make you better. Hasn't worked yet, so good job. But, that's your marquee game. That's your big matchup. Put it on the ring. You got to put something on the other side, right? So focus on that. There's a difference between, like I said, being tactful and, okay, yeah, we're good, and we played well, and this is an accomplishment we wanna honor. And then there's a difference between going, hey, we're the best, they suck. And I think this straddles that line a little bit, but I don't see it as being offensive in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I think people are up in arms a little bit because when you read the reports, some of the players posted it on Twitter, and then in the newspaper on the Detroit News, the article states that the rings were designed by Coach D'Antonio and the football team's leadership council, and they decided, and they've put on rings the scores of games that they consider to be the most significant.
Right.
So the people that are looking at it with a little bit more questionable and a little bit more, with some more ire are thinking like two parts. Well, one, why would you consider a victory over Michigan in the state they were in last year as being the most significant, when really you beat Nebraska? There were other games you could have possibly looked to say, well, it's a little bit more significant than beating Michigan 35-11. You were the heavy favorite. I was celebrating the whole week. I was like, right, we're going to win. There's no doubt. It's a no-brainer. We're going to go down the field and just trounce them, run the ball. And this last year, the 2014 game, was the least pressure I felt playing Michigan.
Yeah.
There was no doubt. There was no worry. It was going to be whether the game was going to be within 7, 10, 15 points, and end up being 35-11. So when you look at it, you say, well, they're sitting around a table having a chat, and they're saying, well, Michigan was the most significant win. I wouldn't have did that. I would have potentially said, well, it's a different type of a different game was more significant. But I understand both sides of it. But I'm happy. I would put the Michigan score every year on a ring because it's an important game, and it's important to it's important for recruits too to see that, hey, Michigan State has a strong program, and every single day you got to remember, every single day that Mark D'Antonio has the job, it's his job to sell that program over Michigan, over Ohio State, over now the teams in the SEC. So you got to kind of do that kind of stuff.
Statistically speaking, that was not their best game. That wasn't their marquee game. That wasn't their most important game. But psychologically, it was, because that's your in-state rivalry. That's the big thing. You go through any town in Michigan, you'll drive through any neighborhood in Michigan, you're going to see Wolverine, the block U of M, you're going to see the green and white, you're going to see the yellow and blue. That's a huge rivalry here. We're one of those states that has the benefit of having two teams that are very, has a very passionate fan base, and it's very equally spread. Now, we're here closer to Michigan, so we see a little bit more of that Wolverine love. You head up towards the middle of the state, you're going to see a lot more Spartan fans. It's an in-state rivalry. It's a big thing here. Even when the game is not a big marquee game, even though, like you said, this year, Spartans went into it pretty much the heavy favorite to win, and it wasn't even going to be close, but it was still talked about a lot. Everybody was excited for it. You still tuned in to watch it, didn't you? You knew it was going to be a blowout in some way, shape, or form. You knew Michigan didn't stand a chance, but did you still turn on the game?
Oh, heck yeah. I was
Exactly.
excited. I wanted to celebrate.
So that's...
Because you knew that on some level, winning this many games in a row was going to spark some change. It's not going to last forever. I'm just enjoying that slice of life, this moment in time when Michigan State could say, boom, we nailed it, and we had the best team in the state for a little bit of time.
Yeah, and that's all that is. It's like I said, statistically speaking, that was not their biggest win. They had more wins that were more important. They had a lot more wins that were more important. But that game, for emotional reasons, for in-state bragging rights, for their fan base, that was the win for the fans. That wasn't a win for the team necessarily. That was a win for the fans. It said, hey, here you go. For the rest of this year, you have bragging rights over your neighbor with the big-ass Michigan flag on his driveway. That's all that was.
Okay, so both of us kind of agree a little bit that it was not that big a violation. It's not that big a deal. Everybody calm down. Yes, you can debate a little bit. Was it the marquee win of the season? You can debate it a little bit, but this thing goes on both sides. Michigan, a couple years back, flew paid someone to fly a banner over Spartan Stadium that said "Go Blue" or "Go, Pro Wolverines." In the David Brandon era, they did some things like that. It's okay. We get it on both sides. I like it. I like both sides. And what I really liked is in the last couple years, the pranks have kind of intensified a little bit. Michigan State went to Ann Arbor and painted the Block M in front of a building, green and white. Great stuff. A couple weeks ago, someone tried to, they did an okay job, but it wasn't as good as State's pranks. But they went to Sparty and threw blue paint and blue and yellow paint on Sparty. So it goes back and forth. And you have to kind of keep it in perspective and understand that it's a rivalry, that the two teams and the fan base included do not like each other. And it's one of those things where it's going to be that way forever, and enjoy the ride. Don't be such a hater. Enjoy it.
Yeah. If that game didn't matter, then you wouldn't care. So stop being a pussy about it.
You got it. You know it. All right. Let's chat a little bit about something that I read recently regarding the Lions. My goodness. Right now we're going into the 2015 season. Everyone is looking for improvement in the offense. Everyone's going to be tuning in to see how this defense will respond to Ndamukong Suh not being around anymore. Well, an article showed up on the ESPN Insider page, a page that you pay for, which I do not, but people have kind of taken snippets of it and posted it on the internet. And on the Insider page, they ranked players that they felt were overpaid. And the number one ranked overpaid veteran on the list is Calvin Megatron Johnson. And when I saw that, I was like, ooh, let me peek into this. They think Megatron's overrated. Well, they looked at, his $17 million cap hit. It's going to be big for the next couple seasons, and he's 30 years old. He hasn't played a full season in a couple years. Last year, he missed some games. They said based on the cap hit, he's the number one most overpaid player. What do you say to that?
Megatron is a freak of nature. He's an amazing, amazing athlete. He does things on the field that few people can do, but he's not productive. And in lies the problem.
Productive enough. He's productive.
Well, he's productive. This is not a knock on Calvin. Calvin is a productive player. He goes out there and gives it his all the time. But he gets injured far too often. This team doesn't get in positions where, a lot of times they're down, and so they're not, they're forcing the ball. They have to go to the tight end or over the middle and things like that. So Calvin, for what he does and the team that he's on and the injuries, I don't feel like that article's that far off. They're not taking into account the intangibles. They're taking into account the statistics, what he puts up compared to what he doesn't put up when he's not on the field versus how much he makes. So statistically speaking, and if you're looking at the numbers, yeah, that's probably accurate. But he does so much for this team on an emotional level. When he's in the game, he's being guarded. So they're not taking into account those things. They're not taking into account the fact that Golden Tate's going to get a lot more chances on the ball because you're going to have two defenders watching Calvin on the other side. It's all relative, I guess. If you're just looking at the numbers, then yeah, you're right. He is.
It was interesting to watch Golden Tate's first year with the Lions when Calvin was on the field and when Calvin wasn't. When he was on the field, kind of saw diminished balls thrown his way. Once Calvin went out, Golden Tate took off. His numbers took off significantly. He was getting thrown the ball. He was getting a lot more targets. He was much more productive. His yards went up. He got touchdown passes. And when Calvin came back, that went away. And the problem is, I think, Calvin is targeted so much, as he should be. I mean, the dude is very tall, huge wingspan, and he's Matthew Stafford's security blanket.
Right.
So I think if he can stay on the field, he's a very productive player. How much of his abilities are going to diminish being a little bit older? Because around this time, you start to see football players' abilities go down. And they noted in the article that in the last couple years, his yards per route, the average yards that he runs per route has kind of dipped a little bit. He's not going out as far each route, and there's been fewer and fewer deep balls thrown his way that have been completed. But I think you have to really find a way to utilize Calvin Johnson and have balance. The offense, and we asked it a lot on the podcast last year. We asked, do you think, and I thought Golden Tate should be considered the number 1 or 1A.
Yeah.
Give him more targets. Let him be the guy that's the focal point. And then you got Calvin Johnson, who can be, just because you don't call him the number 1 doesn't mean he's not going to be part of the offense. No. I think that he's a great player, and I think that I don't think he's overvalued. I don't think he's overrated. He has potential to, on any given play, go to the house on a deep ball. And he has the ability to really move this offense. He's the guy that can make this offense not predictable. Because if he's not there, all the teams are going to do is just keep all the players in that 15-yard window, and the offense is going to stagnate. But that's a guy that can break through and can do a lot.
But again, and I didn't read the article. I only saw a little bit of it, and you probably read more of it than I did. that didn't take into account those things. This article took into account numbers, and numbers-wise, they're right. But there's so much more to football than the numbers. There's so many things that he brings to the table that can't be done. But then also you look at it, there's other guys now doing the same thing. The Odell Beckham, that catch, you look at things, Calvin's...
We could have had him, right?
Yeah, well, Calvin's, his talent is unmeasurable. But what he's been able to bring to the field because of injuries and age and things like that. Like I said, I don't think that article's too far off, but again, it sounds like they're only looking at the numbers and they're not taking into account those other things. If you're taking into account those other things, I totally disagree. There's other players out there who are way more overrated. But if you're just looking at the numbers, given his age, given his injuries, given, his contract hits, yeah, it's probably not that far off, really.
Let's check our Twitter at Detroit Podcast. I threw the question out there on our Twitter page, and we've gotten a decent response. Abe in Southfield tweets us, arguable, but he has not been 100% for a few years and is being paid to be there for all year and the playoffs.
Yeah.
At Vinny B _16, Vincent Bianchi says, I think it's long overdue that people stop taking ESPN seriously as a sports network. At Joe Friedley tweets us, since he signed that deal, he has set the record for yards in a season and has had 277 catches, 4,533 yards, 25 touchdowns, not overpaid. A lot of people kind of disagree a little bit with that article, and they say that the big concern on any situation with any contract is injuries. And if he's not on the field, then there's an issue. And if he can stay on the field for at least 15 to 16 games this year, then I don't believe he'll be overrated. I just think that he needs to find a way to stay healthy, stay on the field, help this offense, and with his presence on the field, Stafford will produce well.
And Calvin is a great guy. He's just an all-around primo human being. So there's not a wide receiver in football right now that matches that aspect of his life. Every wide receiver in football is a tiny little bitch, just whining about whatever Des Bryant is mad about now, whatever. Calvin is not that guy. He's not that flashy, I'm the best there is, I'm the best there ever was, give me my money. No, he's a good person. He's a decent human being. And unfortunately, the stats are going to, show him a little bit less because of some of the things that he does that aren't measurable.
Okay, good point, good chat. Stay with us. We'll take one last quick break, and we'll share our memories. Both of our wrestling legends passed away earlier this week. We'll share our lasting memories of him when we come back from our last break. Doc and Jock podcast. Kenny the Rock Franzel sitting in, and I'll explain why Jock was absent when we come back. DetroitSportsPodcast.com, Doc and Jock Podcast, episode number 97. Definitely check out the guys at the Detroit Sports Nation, DetroitSportsNation.com. Great website. They are unbelievable. They are killing it on Facebook. Give them a like at their Facebook page, Detroit Sports Nation, and definitely check out their website, DetroitSportsNation.com. Our collaboration with them has been excellent, and they continue to be a strong presence here on the podcast because they bring the noise and they have great content. So thank you guys again. We can't thank you enough.
You're the future of our business, and I know when you guys have a podcast like this, our future is in good hands.
You got to check out their stuff. I'm really impressed by it. You guys have probably one of the better ones I've seen in the country.
Wow.
In a short period of time, you've done good work. Look at me kissing your hand.
I know.
American dream. He's just a common man, working hard with his hands. He's just a common man, working hard for the man. Hey, he's a man.
Not the American dream. Kenny, come on, man. We're getting older, man. Can you believe that? That was sad. I'm glad they listened. That was a great entrance song, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a great entrance song. Somebody posted a statistic that like 90% of the wrestlers from WrestleMania 3 or something like that are now dead.
Oh.
That's just, yeah. It's very, very sad. He was, Dusty Rhodes. I mean,
He was American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. He passed away at the age of 69. And it was just really sad when that news came out. It was like, no, he was one of those. He was a wrestling legend before we were born.
Yeah.
He had legendary feuds with Ric Flair. He came up in these organizations, in WCW, the old NWA. He was just involved in the wrestling business for such a long time. And he had his second run of popularity when we were kids, with the polka dot, the black and yellow, with the lovely older manager that he would dance with. And
Sapphire. Sapphire.
And so that's when we came to know him, and that he was just a fun guy. But when you look back, he was a guy that was known for great promos, legendary feuds, and he was just a great wrestler.
He was The Rock before The Rock existed. I mean, nobody cut a promo the way he did.
And I posted it on our Twitter page. If you want to listen to a great wrestling promo, widely considered one of the top 5 promos of all time that's ever been delivered, go to YouTube and just type in Hard Times, Dusty Rhodes promo.
Hard Times.
That was a crazy promo.
Fantastic.
He's coming back, just to briefly recap it. He's coming back from injury, and he's about to fight Ric Flair in 1985 Starrcade, and he comes back and just cuts a nasty, great promo that just encapsulates, what wrestling's about. Going for it and encapsulates what a promo is about. Really selling that emotion, and it's a great promo. And I just heard it for like the second or third time when people were tweeting about it and texting about it, and I was like, wow, what a great promo. Still, if you play it, you have to play it more than once. It's great.
Yeah. I also I think if you get a chance to look at his WWE Hall of Fame induction, that was just a crazy, just an emotional. His sons who he's had some back and forth with over the years. The two of them standing there on the stage with him, and his speech after that was just very powerful. He was one of those guys you just loved because he was just fun. Guys like him and George the Animal Steele, they got it. They understood what they were there to do. They were there to just have fun and be wild and crazy and get the fans going. And he was one of the best, and he will surely be missed.
And now, since he retired, when most wrestlers that are popular, that have staying power, they work behind the scenes and they start writing the shows. They start kind of working the angles together in wrestling, and they work to improve the product. So a lot of the people on the current WWE roster were very devastated because he helped them continue to advance in their career, and you just give them pointers. And he was one of those guys that would give a guy like a Wade Barrett, a wrestler like Seth Rollins, a wrestler like Paige, some pointers on how to speak, on how to work on your persona as a wrestler. And nowadays, with his absence, who's going to take that place? It's just a huge loss for wrestling, and it's a huge loss because we're not going to get a chance to see more wrestlers that he could have put his stamp on. What would he have done with a Kevin Owens? What would he have done with these new guys coming up, Neville, these new guys, Sami Zayn?
Yeah.
There's a lot of new up-and-coming wrestlers that are not going to have the benefit of his future guidance, and that just really sucks.
Well, you got to remember, though, there's a lot of wrestlers that are now out of the game now that he put his stamp on. Guys like Dean Malenko and guys who are instrumental in bringing a lot of these young guys along. So his legacy is gonna live on no matter what. But he was a very instrumental person all throughout his career. I mean, those matches with Ric Flair, YouTube Ric Flair versus Dusty Rhodes, you're gonna find some crazy good matches. But even behind the scenes when he was a wrestler, he was instrumental in some of WCW's biggest events like Starrcade and War Games. And, he was the reason that a lot of those things came about. So he was, kind of the country version of Vince McMahon in a lot of ways. And it's a sad, this is one of those deaths that you hear about. And, every time somebody dies that you're familiar with that's in popular culture, you kind of go, oh, well, that's sad. It hits you a little bit. You go, you think about the moment that you were most associating with them, the good movie that they were in, or the amazing sports highlight or whatever. There's some, though, that you go, wow, no. You're like, ah.
We need 10 more years with American. With
and
Dusty.
you get a rush of memories of that black and yellow polka dots suit running around and being all crazy and fun, and Sapphire beating the crap out of what was Macho Man's
Sensational Sherry.
Sherry. So those matches were great. Those are the first things I remembered was Sherry and Sapphire versus Sherry and Dusty versus Sapphire and Macho Man. So it's sad. it's very sad, but it's also a testament to him that wrestling has made this comeback, and he was responsible for a lot of the guys that are now responsible for that, epic comeback. That WWE's a powerhouse again, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. They're back to where they were, I think, towards the end of the Attitude Era. So,
all credit, Kenny and I were big wrestling fans as kids, and definitely the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, was one of the reasons why. Man, sir, the time flies when we get together to talk sports. We've already been rapping for an hour. We've said what we've had to say regarding the week of sports.
Yeah.
I know that you're probably chomping at the bit to see Jurassic Park for the 13th or 14th time.
Jurassic World. It's called Jurassic World.
Jurassic World.
There you go. Thank you. Get it right.
Okay, 14 times? How many times have you seen it?
I have seen it 5 times.
My goodness.
I've seen it 5 times.
Okay, we'll let you get back to that. Thank you. Jock was away on vacation, and he had some travel issues, so he will return, and Kenny will be continue to be a strong presence here on the podcast because he has strong opinions. So
you can't keep me away.
For Kenneth, The Rock, Franzel, at TV Chips on Twitter, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Follow us on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast. Support us by going to our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Thank you for downloading this episode of the Doc and Jock Podcast, episode number 97. Thank you very much.
You're fired for doing too much.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me. They talk to me.